Hello, Jeff Zwerink here, and welcome again to Give and Take, the segment of the show where we explore science and thought-provoking issues to equip you to be more confident in sharing your faith. Today I'm joined by our good friend Travis Campbell, and we're going to explore what he thinks is the strongest evidence for the truth of Christianity. Travis, it's good to have you here today. So I know you've got a background in philosophy, you've got a PhD in philosophical theology, if I'm correct.
Yes.
You're the founder of a ministry called Consider This, which looks to equip people to think philosophically, scientifically, and to be prepared to share the gospel. And just from your background, as you've studied this, what do you think is the strongest evidence that Christianity is actually true?
Well, the strongest evidence that Christianity is true would consist of the evidence for God's existence and the resurrection. And I think that my favorite argument to give as a first foot forward in presenting the case for God's existence is the Kalam cosmological argument.
So kind of flesh out, I know that deals with the beginnings of things and what beginnings mean, so kind of flesh out, what is the Kalam cosmological argument?
Well, the Kalam cosmological argument is an argument that argues from the beginning of the universe to the existence of a cause of that universe. And it's very simple in its formulation. Whatever begins to exist has to have a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe must have a cause.
So obviously, I mean, with RTB, we've got lots of evidence pointing to a beginning of the universe, Big Bang cosmology, even the multiverse and stuff.
Sure.
Kind of practically speaking, how do you use this to go out and share the gospel? What does that look like?
Well, when I'm talking to people about my faith, I'm usually going to talk about, first and foremost, Christ and what he did. But if I'm talking to someone who says, well, wait a minute, I don't think that God exists in the first place, then if they say to me, well, why do you think God exists? I usually give them this argument, and it's usually very simple. I will say, do you agree with the majority of scientists who say that the universe had a beginning? I often give them the quotation of Stephen Hawking, who in his book, The Nature of Space and Time, says, everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. And then if they say, well, of course I agree with that, I will say, well, whatever has a beginning has to have a cause, and the universe had a beginning, therefore it has a cause. And I have, the vast majority of times that I've actually shared that with people, they've actually become excited about the prospect of God's existence. Many convert to theism on the spot, or at least after a few weeks of thinking about it. I've had many atheistic and agnostic students in my class. When we go over this argument, they come back weeks later, say it's very hard to get around this evidence. So the response has been very positive.
So there's a remarkable nature of what you're saying there, because that whole discussion took a grand total of a minute for you to kind of lay out the case, if that much. I mean, it really is, if there's a beginning, there needs to be a cause of that beginning. The most likely, or the best explanation is that there's, or maybe not even the best explanation, but the explanation is that there's a God. So,
yes. And in fact, I usually don't even get into how do we know that the cause is God. It's, for most people, once you explain to them that there must be a cause of the universe, that settles in their minds fairly clearly that there has to be a God.
So, I mean, you said some people have adopted theism straight away. You get fairly positive response most times from atheists or skeptics. When you get pushback, what does the pushback or the objections, how do those cash out?
Well, surprisingly, the objection that I usually get doesn't concern that second premise, which Reasons to Believe spends most of its time defending that the universe had a beginning. The pushback I usually get is on that first premise, to the effect that, yeah, that premise is true. Whatever begins to exist has a cause within the universe, but it doesn't apply to the universe as a whole. And so we spend a good deal of time talking about whether that first premise can actually be applied to the whole universe rather than just things going on in the universe.
So we've got a few minutes left here. Let's kind of cash out, or how does that conversation go? Because it seems kind of ludicrous to claim that something can begin to exist and not have a cause. What distinguishes the universe from everything else?
That's a very good question, and I usually throw that at the debate partner, if you want to call them that. I will say, well, what makes nothingness so so discriminatory? Why can nothingness produce a whole universe, but it can't produce things within the universe? It seems to me that if you can produce an entire universe, then you could produce cows and cars. Why doesn't a Bengal tiger, as William Lane Craig says, just appear before us right now? So this sort of treating that first premise as a kind of arbitrary stopping point at the universe seems just to be that, an ad hoc, arbitrary resistance to the argument.
Are there people who claim that, even just without making that distinction between the universe and stuff in the universe, that would argue that, no, things can exist without a cause?
Well, we agree that things can exist without a cause, but I don't think that things that begin to exist can exist without a cause.
Okay, so this is alluding God is existing but doesn't have a cause. So it's the fact of the beginning, I guess. Okay, so let's address that question in the context of a beginning. Are there people who would claim that things can begin to exist without needing a cause?
I don't know of anybody that says things can begin to exist that has a cause, unless the universe is the exception. So I've never heard of anyone say really that things pop into being uncaused out of nothing. Now, I do know of a few scientists that have tried to appeal to quantum mechanics, and that's your field, that have tried to say that that breaks the law of causality. But my understanding of quantum mechanics is that there are many interpretations of that, and most of them are deterministic in character. The fact that I can't locate the position and velocity of a quantum particle only means that I might not be aware of what the cause is, but that's not proof that things begin to exist without a cause.
Fair enough. So do you get any pushback on the second premise, that the universe has a beginning?
So far, I've never run into someone who's going to deny that premise. We live in a scientific culture in the sense that people have a very high regard to what the scientists are doing. And so the majority of scientists are telling us that the universe had a beginning. And quoting someone like Stephen Hawking, I think, is good enough for most people. I don't get any pushback there.
You know, I will say I've interacted enough that I do get some of that pushback. But I think I agree with your assessment that when you look at what the bulk of scientists say, they do point to the universe having a beginning. And that really does, given the Kalam cosmological argument, point strongly in favor of a creator. I think that's a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it really is, when we plumb the depths of Christianity and what it says about this world, if God is who he says he is, we would expect to see lots of evidence pointing to him being the creator. And when we look at the fact that the universe had a beginning and that beginning needs a cause, we can use that as a tool to go out and share with others that there is a creator, that there is a God who's created the universe for us to be here, that emphasizes that the Bible is an accurate description of things and tells us how we relate to that creator. And that's powerful and good incentive to go out and share that truth with others.